Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting for January 24th, 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for a moment of silence. There were 2 or 3 police officers shot over the weekend. One died that I'm aware of. Others are in critical condition. Please pray for our first responders and for their safety. Thank you. We start with public comment, ladies and gentlemen. If there's anyone who would like to address the council during public comment, now would be that opportunity. Anyone for public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Hi. If you just want to have a seat, you can give us your name and address. You can take off your mask if you like to, because you are social distance from everybody. If you're more comfortable with that, or leave the mask on, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Thank you. I'm Bob Petrie, and I live in Forest Hills of Londonderry. We're a 55-plus community. And I have a few questions I'd like to ask of the board that was sent to me by various residents at Forest Hills. If I may?
Of course, please proceed.
Okay. This is from one resident. What guidelines or formula does the town use to assess property?
So, we actually, why don't we have an item, do we have an item on here today, or we were going to address this during public comment? I had asked the staff at the last meeting to meet with the assessors department and come back with a presentation for us to help us understand the exact same question that you're asking me. Could you please, because it's Mr. Malaguti or Mr. Smith, one of you, could you please give us an update on where that is at?
Sure. So following the last council meeting, myself and Attorney Malaguti did meet with our assessor, Steve Hamilton, to go over these and many of the questions like that with him. He is going to be coming into the next council meeting. He's on vacation this week. He'll be coming into the next council meeting on February 7th to address this entire matter of how the assessments are handled for the 55-plus communities in town. As I know, there's a lot of concern about the increase in the assessments from 2 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question. Are the guidelines the same for over 55 developments as other residential properties with acres of land?
All right, so let's capture these questions, and let's make sure they're going to get answered at the next meeting, because I don't know the answer.
Okay. Why are we being assessed exactly the same as other 55 properties built last year? I'm just repeating questions that were asked.
Sure.
The good news is that these are all recorded, and we have our secretary in the back taking notes.
So who will get back with me, and how will that happen?
So what I would like to do, if that's okay with you,
Sure.
is I would like to be able to address them as part of this presentation that the assessor is going to give to us.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Sure. Last question that this lady had. Is it standard practice to assess property without an inspection visit? This goes back to the formula that she was talking about. How has that come up with?
I'll let them explain how they go about doing assessments. They do try to inspect the properties. There's, the RSA gives the provisions in which they can try to do that, but I'll let them answer that as well and how they go about that. I know that there is a certain percentage of properties they try to inspect internally every year, but I'll let them answer that unless someone has something different.
Yeah, I can briefly touch upon that, but again, Steve, when Steve's here, he'll be much more able to thoroughly answer the question.
So he's going to be here February 7th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are on-site inspections that are done on a cyclical basis. So roughly 20% of the town gets done every year. And those inspections can occur either on-site around the property or inside the home. But in order to get inside the home, the homeowner needs to give permission to the assessing department to be able to do that. Outside of those cyclical inspections, though, there are the town-wide revaluations, which are done of every property in town. And that has to be done at least once every 5 years. But we've been moving to every 2 years.
Kind of leading into my next question, exactly.
Okay. Sure.
Well, I guess the question is, we were doing it on a 5-year
Right.
basis, is correct?
Yep.
So why did it go to 2 years?
Yeah, so the big reason is because so the last one we did prior to this one was in 2019. The one prior to that was in 2014. And there was a huge jump in the market between 14 and 19, where most home values went up 25% over that time when those assessments came out in 2019. The market right now has been on really an unprecedented climb. And so there was concern that if we waited another 5 years, the jump was going to be even higher than 25%. On the flip side of that, let's say the market crashes. Well, now we don't need to wait 5 years to capture the decrease in value. We can capture that much more quickly. So what we're trying to do is prevent these large jumps. Now, that being said, I know you all have a large jump in your assessments in just these 2 years. And again, Steve will come in and explain more and go over comps in the various 55-plus communities.
I guess the question I would have, what was the average rate over that 5-year period versus the two? We know what the 2-year rate was, especially last year. You know, in my particular situation, my assessed home value went up 35%. But what was the rate over those 5 years to kind of compare relative to a 2-year period? You follow my?
So he's leaving out the big reason why we changed. The big reason is that the Department of Revenue requires us to stay between a 90 and 110% ratio.
That's a state.
Yeah, the State Department of Revenue. So what happens is that means we have to be in between there for commercial and for residential. So what happens is that commercial tends to move slower than residential. Mm-hmm. When we drop below 90%, and I'll let the town manager and the town attorney explain to you what happens, but basically what happens is it leaves us open to abatements, and part of that process is we lose every time it happens, and I'll let them give you the details.
Yeah, the commercial properties are good at hiring really good attorneys who look at these equalization ratios in towns all across New Hampshire. And what they'll do is if they find that communities are running close to 90% or below, so prior to the revaluation in 2019, I think we were around 84, 85% of market value.
Below that threshold.
What's that?
Below that.
A lot below the threshold. And so what they do is they put in abatements challenging what their actual tax assessment was or what their tax bill was, because they base it on what the equalization ratio is, not at 100% of market. So in other words, if we were taxing them at 100% of their value, they'll look at the equalization ratio and say, well, you should have only been taxing us at 84% of it because that's where your ratio was according to the Department of Revenue. By the way, New Hampshire is the only state in the country that uses this equalization ratio. And as the chairman noted, we ended up giving a lot back in abatements back in 2018, around that time frame, because there were a lot of abatements filed by commercial properties because of how low our equalization ratio was. So we try to stay as close to market as possible. And even on this one, and Steve can talk to this more again when he gives his presentation, we aren't going to be at 100% in 2021. I mean, that's the crazy thing. If you look at what home sales are doing right now compared to where assessments are, we're still probably somewhere in the lower to mid 90s range, which is...
That's for the whole town.
For the whole town, yeah, not just in 55 plus, but for the entire town.
So Bob, that's what I want him to explain is why you're here, why they're here, what's the math, how did they go about doing this, what was the reasoning behind it? You know, I as I discussed with you, I'm also very interested in hearing how
Thank
this
you.
all works.
Yep.
So,
And I would add this too. You can file an abatement now. And if you find you need to withdraw it afterwards, if after the presentation and the analysis you look at it and say, okay, I guess there isn't a basis for an abatement, you can always withdraw it. But there's no harm in filing the abatement if you feel that your assessment is over what it should be.
What is, relative to abatements, what is the criteria by which whomever decides whether or not there's an abatement warranted or not? What are the criteria there?
Well, there's a number of criteria you can look at. I mean, certainly if you look at, say you're comparing comps in your own community, and you're saying, okay, we're assessed at X, but these homes in our community all seem to be selling for far less than what the assessment is, that certainly is one criteria. If your home is assessed a lot higher than all of your neighbors, but they're relatively the same kind of homes with the same finishings, if you will, hardwood floors and such, that's another criteria. So there's a number of criteria you can look at when asking for an abatement. And, the assessing team will go through all of it with you and make a determination on whether or not they feel that there is a basis for an abatement or that it's properly assessed the way it should be.
One of the things that was brought to my attention was the assessment was done in the first quarter of 2021? Is that
so
right?
I'm not sure when it was done. One thing I just have to mention right now is, and just so you're aware, Bob, usually there's a 5-minute limit for public comment. I've waived that limit. So I've waived that limit because I believe these questions are important.
Right.
I just want to make note of that for the minutes so that if
I'm going to be quick about the last
and
couple of questions.
that's okay. So the whole thing about how the assessments are done, I find the whole thing's a little bit unusual from the standpoint of that it's based on where you were April 1st. Yet the Department of Revenue doesn't base their rate until October, right?
Correct.
So we have to have ours ready April 1st. They don't tell us theirs until October. And there's a reason why you have a lot of questions, because it's complicated.
Well, the reason I brought up the first quarter is because, man, that's when construction costs, building materials, lumber, plumbing supplies, it just went through the roof.
It's always April
Supply and
1st.
demand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been April 1st.
And that's a state law.
And then they come back to us in October and say, oh, you're here. Well, things change between April and October. So it's difficult for us to manage as well. So a lot of times we're trying to go, okay, it's here.
Okay. Well, I guess the last thing I would comment on is the property taxes went up so drastically, it seemed to a lot of people in our community, Forest Hills, that people are wondering, could this not have been a portion of a 2-year period instead of just hitting us all at one time?
You know what? And those are great questions. I mean, I think that's something that we should explore. But at the next meeting, I've made it clear to staff that I want them to be ready to give us a presentation. These are great questions.
Thank you.
And let's get the information out there so that everybody understands it.
I think people would be happier and more at ease with getting answers to the questions that they have and the concerns, and I think that's, appreciate that.
Absolutely. And they're good questions, and they need to be answered.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, is there anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir. Hi, sir. So if I can just get your name and address?
Yeah, my name is Brian Egan, live at 19 St. Andrews Way, and that's in Forest Hills also.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the company that did the assessment, are they hired by you people or by the state or by who?
By us.
Okay,
So we used to have an in-house assessor who did all of this, and now we use a contractor.
and why?
It reduced it reduced our expenses is one reason. And the second reason is that they brought a lot more expertise to it than we could do in-house on our own.
Okay. I'm sure you all know how much your property taxes went up.
Yep.
Most houses in my neighborhood, including my own, went up 40%. 40%. Anybody here, did your taxes go up 40%? Anybody?
28.
See, I'm a businessman. I was a businessman. I dealt with budgets and all those type of things, all right? So I look at things on a business approach. All I know is if I hired somebody and they came in and said, well, yeah, all these homes over here and over here, they went up 40%. I would want to know why, right then and there, before anything went out in the way of taxes. That's the way I look at it. There's an urgency here, people. All right? When I was on the board, and I was on the board for 7 years in my neighborhood, we had people who had problems paying their association fee. What are we up to now, $295? Yeah. $295 a month now. I'm concerned about these people. We just fixed our roads. That was over $100,000 that we did, not the town.
Right.
But we're working within our budget and doing the best we can. My question to you is, how can you let this happen? All right? The most expensive house in our neighborhood sold for $466,000. The most expensive. We have houses, there's one house that's saying is worth $600,000. My house, they're saying is worth $503,000. The most expensive house, the largest house. My house isn't nowhere near that. All right? How can you let this happen? Shame on you. If I hired somebody and I saw something wrong, I would put an end to it and ask questions then. Not now, then. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Hi, my
Hi.
name's Pete Liaison, and I also live in Forest Hills. I haven't even met my neighbors yet, but we just moved there. And we moved there in September, September 30th, and we paid $1,000 less than the highest price in the neighborhood, right next door. And we paid $465, which was over what they were asking, and it's also, when we got reassessed $100,000 more than that. And we're saying, how can that even be possible, right? So I'm kind of surprised. I mean, we've only been there 3 months, and I'm looking at the neighbors, and I'm seeing some of the emails coming back and forth, and like Bob and some of the others were saying, you know, a lot of these people are, you know, I work, so it's not gonna kill me if I have to pay an extra $3,500 in taxes, but I feel bad for the neighbors that can't afford it. And I don't think it's right. And so what I was wondering is whether the assessments are based on, not necessarily market value, but replacement value. It seems like they're being compared to some of the other neighborhoods that are brand new, and the cost to replace those houses, or our house replacing that with a brand-new house, would obviously cost more. But they're not brand-new houses, they're 16 years old. And we're also paying the maintenance on the neighborhood, the streets, like they just said. You know, we don't have town storage, et cetera. So I just wanted to add that if they're gonna go through and start looking at explaining what the process is, I also do math, and so if they have a linear regression equation or something that they use to go ahead and assess, you know, if you have a 2-bedroom, you get this in the formula. If you have a 3-bedroom, it's this value, and you basically just multiply all the factors, and that's what they come up with. That's how they do the assessments. So if they could share not only, you know, the overall process, but the formula itself, I think people would feel more comfortable that it's transparent.
So in full disclosure, 3 years ago, pre-COVID, the town manager and I went to every one of the 55 and older communities in town. And we did a presentation in town, and keeping in mind, the town is 23% of your tax rate. So we go in and we went and started to explain to everyone what to do, or answer their questions, how the town operates, all these different pieces and everything. We have, 9,000 dwellings in town. So in order for, basically a volunteer board that's elected to try to understand everything that's going on, we're doing the best we can. Now, the way I found out about this is I was at the school board meeting, and these gentlemen spoke to the school board. So I met them outside and explained some of the same things that they explained tonight. So what I told them is that now that I'm aware of it, at the next town council meeting, I will take it directly to the council, ask the council for a consensus to go to the assessor. I was hoping it was going to be tonight, in which they'd come back and explain it to them. And use the same numbers, which I was surprised by as well. Yeah. What I've always learned is that, okay, get these numbers, go back, have everybody do the due diligence, and then come back and explain it to us. And as I explained to the first speaker, Mr. Petrie, is that I don't know what they're going to say. But what I'm not going to, what we're going to do is I'm going to listen to everybody and listen to everything that you all say. And as I promised him, is I'm going to get you answers. I just don't know what they are tonight. But I do appreciate you coming down and speaking to it.
Yeah, we just thought that explanation was gonna happen tonight, so. that's
Yeah,
why
I had reached out to someone in the community and let them know that we were delayed
Yeah.
prior to the meeting. And so I apologize if that message didn't get to you. So my apologies for that.
All right. Nice to meet your neighbors.
Sir, could I just have you clarify something for me? I was trying to follow what you were saying about the assessment being 100,000 over.
Yeah.
Can you just explain again
Yeah,
what
we
you were
just-
saying?
What was your address?
38 Sawgrass,
Okay.
and we just bought on September 30th.
Yeah.
And the assessment was over 100,000 more than that, and they said the assessments were done in April, I think you said, right?
So you said assessment was 100,000 over what you bought it for? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the assessment in front of me, but
Okay.
I just kind of
I
read it
just
from
thought-
work and.
Wanted to get clarification. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. If any of you want to know what I'm doing, I'm pulling up the assessor's database so I can actually look at it. 38 Sawgrass? I'm not, something, so it's 38 Sawgrass, right? I'm not seeing that sale in here, in the database. So if we could look at that one specifically? Did you buy it from folks who live in Delray Beach? So if we could look at 38 Sawgrass, I'm not seeing the same numbers. So if we could check that one out specifically, based on what I'm seeing in the assessor's database. I'm showing the last sale to be August 18th, 2006. So if we could check that, please. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir.
Mike Arbor, Mountain Home Estates,
Yes, sir.
from Londonderry. I'm all ears because this is all new. Same motivation is knowing we have residents in our property who have a fairly fixed income, and it's always a battle between maintaining the infrastructure in a way that preserves values and quality of life in the community versus keeping up with taxes and all the costs of life that we all deal with. I'll just ask one question, I promise.
Sure.
The philosophy of using appraised value to determine taxes, what's the relationship between the town's operating expenses versus using appraised values? The question is, if values are shooting skyward, is this just a big opportunity for the town to reap benefits and tax income, or?
It's an interesting question. And I've said this to people over the years and everything. It takes approximately $120 million to run all the services in the town, including schools in the town. When we went out and saw these communities, we didn't happen to come to your community because it was in the 55 and older demographic. So when we went out to them, asked them a very interesting question. In March, we vote on $120 million. And I asked a question in the room, and I said to them, I said, how many of you are registered to vote? And everybody in the room raised their hand. I said, how many of you vote in November? Everybody raised their hand. I said, how many of you vote in March? About 10 people raised their hand out of probably was about 80 people there. And then we went into a very detailed explanation of how we operate as a government, because we want people to vote in March. So what happens is when the assessed value goes up, two things happened this year. The assessed value went up, the tax rate did go down, but we also lost about $200 million in assessed value from the power plant that we had, because the way that they're assessed is based on market rate. And that's all done by state law as well. So there's a little bit of that. So what drives us is that we have run what I would call a flat, as close to a flat budget or a budget that doesn't increase on the town side of business for 7 or 8 years. So we run a default budget. We come in either above or below default. So, and we haven't, but we've never come in above default. So we try to come in with the minimum amount. This year, we're coming in $16,000 under last year.
$16,000 below last year's operating budget.
So the assessments went up, and we're coming in at $16,000 below last year's operating budget. We're 22.8% of the tax piece. So what I explain to people is that we're sort of like the bank. We hold all the money, and then the other people who are part of government, which is library is a separate form of government, they ask us for a check, and we write them a check. I'm just using a check as an example. The school department is $83 million. So they come and they say, hello, town, we need $83 million because we collect all the money here. And then we send them $83 million. And that they do their portion of what they do in teaching the children, $83 million. And with so we pay 64% of your property tax goes to the schools, and then 10%, about 10% goes to the state. And fortunately, our school system recovers almost that entire 10%. So we have a lot of moving pieces. What I can tell you, the answer from the town side is we operate as lean and mean as we can. You know, that's what we believe. You give the best services you possibly can and make the community as safe as you possibly can, but we try to do it as lean and mean as we can.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And you typically make that adjustment with while the valuations may go up, you adjust the tax rate a little bit to try and maintain
If, for example,
that.
last year's tax rate was, anybody know right off the top of their head?
Last year's for the town or for the
Total tax rate. It was
$20.11, I believe.
and this year we're looking at,
18 and,
right, so the tax rate went down,
yeah,
you know, because, you know, I mean, revenues went up.
yep,
You know, or the assessments went up, excuse me, the valuation went up.
right.
So we try to do that back and forth so that we don't, you know, we all pay taxes too.
Yep.
So we're motivated by the same thing you are. Now, you know, I tell everybody, and, you know, the folks from Forest Hills did it, is that there's basically two major forms of government in town. There's the school department, and there's the town. And, you know, you need to express your opinions to everybody.
Gotcha.
And you need to show up in March and vote.
Okay,
Does that help?
it does.
And please tell me if I'm not helping.
I'm just a little bit smarter than I was a few minutes ago.
If I could add a comment or two. Thank you. Theoretically, as the assessed value goes up, the tax rate comes down, and theoretically, the amount of money you pay in taxes shouldn't change. We know that that's not how it actually plays out. There are some people whose taxes go down and some go up. The issue for the tax rate and the tax value, I'm sorry, the assessed value is something, my wife is even questioning it. She says, well, yeah, taxes went up. What are you guys doing with all that extra money? We don't get any extra money when the tax rate goes up or the assessed value goes up. We don't collect any more money. We only collect the money that you, as a citizens, say authorize us to collect, and you're going to have an opportunity to do that in March when you vote the town budget. So whatever people are paying in taxes has no impact about what we're going to take in for taxes, because that's determined by you. And as I said, it has to play out to be a net zero.
Thank you.
So his taxes go up $100, mine go down $100, and it's a net zero. That's the way it's supposed to work. And again, that's theoretical. There are businesses who are very pleased with the fact that their taxes are going down, because the business tax rate doesn't usually stay up as high as the property tax rate. It could change if we had a drop in the market. Your assessed value would go down pretty rapidly, and the associated tax rate. But the businesses, their tax rate wouldn't drop much at all, so they would pay more taxes. It all has to net out to zero at the end. Every plus has to be matched with a minus, so that there's no change in tax being collected.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else for public comment this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I just have two small items if the public is done.
Yeah, one thing I just want to comment on is that, and the reason we were walking around up here is, and I was talking, and I apologize for that, is I was looking at the assessor's database, and it doesn't have the same information. Joe pulled another report up that verified what the information was, that verified that gentleman's number. The number I'm seeing online is significantly different, and the number that I'm seeing that it's sold for is significantly different. So I have more questions than I'm not happy about how many questions I'm going to have.
So I may be able to speak to that. I don't know the specifics of what was reported versus what you're looking at there. Certainly, it does take some time for the assessor to be notified that there's been a sale. And the way that process works, Mr. Chairman, is through the Department of Revenue Administration. Typically, the taxpayer has to file what's called a PA-34 form and a CD-57 form. Those contain the assessed values and the selling price, as well as some of the characteristics of the property that factor in. And that's really the trigger for the assessor to know, hey, there's been a changeover in ownership here, and to put that into the database. That's where that information comes from. So I don't know if that's answers that specific question.
Let me be very specific about my dissatisfaction with what I'm reading. The Londonderry Assessor's Database has 23 Sawgrass at $362,000 as assessed value. He bought the house for $465,000, and Joe just pulled a separate report from the assessor's page, which shows him at $564,000. That's, what's going on?
So the sale was made on 9/30/21 for $465 to Don and Wayne Brockney.
I understand.
Values at $562,500.
So I want to see a deep dive, especially into their complex, just based on what I'm seeing, what I can look up.
Certainly, we'll confer with the assessor on why that is.
And want to see an explanation. And I thank all of you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you very much, yep.
You know, and my apologies that it's taken having to come here for it to come to our attention. We good? All right, ladies and gentlemen, public comment is now closed. New business, appointment to PFAS Study Commission. Yes, Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'd like to discuss this with the council, and then if you would permit me, a couple other PFAS-related items while we're on the topic, just so I can get them all out at one time for those who may be interested. So the first is with regard to, and please pardon my voice, to the Commission to Study the Environmental and Public Health Impacts of PFAS Chemicals. This is a state legislatively created commission that was created back in 2019 and has representatives from Merrimack, Bedford, and Litchfield. They have since added 2 appointments for Londonderry. So I'm here before the council tonight just to bring that to your attention. And the chair had indicated that he'd like to discuss a plan for making those appointments. They're 2 different appointments, 2 different characteristics. The first is simply a representative from Londonderry appointed by the governing body. This can be anyone appointed by the town council who you feel would be appropriate for this commission. Just to give you some examples, in Merrimack, they have a town councilor who's serving as their appointed person. That town councilor is also a state rep and happened to write the bill establishing the commission, so they're well-versed in the commission's charge. In Bedford, they have a long-term ZBA member and former town councilor who's a lawyer and also happens to be a scientist. So those are the appointments that they've made by their governing bodies. So that's one appointment. The second appointment is supposed to be, and this is language from the legislation, a resident who is a member of a drinking water-related environmental advocacy citizen organization. That person is not appointed by the council, can be recommended by the council, but is officially appointed by the Senate president. So as of right now, Londonderry has these 2 open seats on the commission. We have not yet appointed anyone. It's my understanding that Councilor Dolan had been recommended for the former appointment, and that is the appointment to be recommended by the governing body, by the council, likely in light of his chairing our very own PFAS study committee here in town. So I bring that to your attention and just ask for the council's direction as to how you'd like to proceed so we can get folks appointed to this commission. I will tell you that the commission meets, it appears, on the 2nd Friday of each month at 9 a.m., and they've been meeting remotely just due to the fact that there are no meeting rooms available up at the Capitol when they would like to meet. So the next meeting is February 11th at 9 a.m. So with the council's direction, particularly for the second appointment, meaning a resident that's associated with an environmental advocacy organization, we would have time to put it out, if you'd like me to, just to solicit resident interest, and perhaps the council could make that appointment at the February 7th meeting in time for that next meeting, the next commission meeting on the 11th.
Okay,
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yeah, absolutely.
I would want to reiterate my volunteerism for the appointment that will be made by the Senate President. I've already been selected for that, but it just hasn't made its way, that selection process hasn't made its way all the way through the Senate President and the Speaker. But when that does make it its way through that process, I would volunteer to fill that role.
Thank you. So what we're saying is that really, we have to wait for the Senate President. We have already given our blessing. We'd like to have Councilor Dolan, and we have to wait for that one check mark.
Actually, I would recommend, Councilor Dolan, if you would be okay with this, that if the council would like to have Tom serving on the committee immediately, if you will, to make it official, the council could vote to make that appointment, and that would be the council's appointment.
Okay.
Then we could solicit interest for the other resident who is associated with an environmental advocacy group, specifically having to do with
Two distinct,
water,
right.
And then the council doesn't actually vote on that one. It would instead just be a recommendation to the Senate, and they would be appointed by the Senate
Do you have any
President.
problem with us doing that, Ruth?
Nope.
Okay.
I just want to say that I've been going to these meetings for the last 6 months or so, and I had the long conversation with Rosemary, and that's how I found out that we didn't have anybody sitting there. And so we tried to move this forward. This is the one that is specific to health and health testing with cancers related to PFOAs and that study. And all the other towns had had their studies done, and we have not gotten ours yet, even though the data is already collected and is available. So I just wanted to let you aware of that, because I do go as a participant and listen into what they're talking about on a regular basis. So if you want to catch up on it, that's fine. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank
You're welcome.
As far as the second piece, I think we can probably delay that a few minutes before, so get John back in the room. But as far as the second piece goes, would we go out to the public and kind of?
We certainly could, and I think I would also, let the former members of the PFAS study committee here in town who had expressed an interest in this particular topic know about it as well, just to raise it on their radar if any of them would be interested.
I think it'd be good
as
to
well.
probably put it on the website with the specifics that were
Right.
requirements, et cetera, and
Yep.
what the process would be.
Yep.
We could actually get a third person on that committee representing Londonderry, which would be a smart thing. And in my conversation with Rosemary was that someone who was like an engineer, a doctor, a scientist, someone in the related field could be a resident who could also sit on their filling two spots. In other words, they're looking for people in that water industry.
Oh, and one of the
And
other open positions.
Yeah, there are more open positions, so
Yeah.
therefore, if we could
Sure,
get
if
another
there could
person
happen
on,
to be a
that would
Londonderry
only be
resident.
more beneficial to our town to have that,
Right.
so.
So I think that's the way we should go with the ad in the newspaper if we can, or also the website. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of pause for this one and we'll go on to the next one, which is going to be Charlie Carr, if that's okay with everybody, just so we can get an opinion from one of the other counselors.
Sure.
And kind of this way we'll all five of us be able
Yep.
to recommend.
If you would you let me just do a couple other quick sort of PSAs about PFAS, so just so we're all on the same page. I wanted to make the public aware this information is on our website. It's also on our social media. But DHHS, to Councilor Paul's point, will be hosting this Thursday night a Zoom meeting for the communities of Merrimack, Litchfield, Bedford, and Londonderry. It's at 6:30 p.m. The information, again, is on our website where you have to register for the Zoom. If you want to participate live, watch it live, ask questions, that sort of thing. It's going to focus on the status of their investigation into cancer rates in the community, which may or may not be related to PFAS issues, okay? If you are unable to do it via Zoom, it will be recorded, and we are going to put it on Gov22, our local access channel, after it's recorded, okay? And then the very last thing, I just wanted to make the community aware. I know I've been updating you on the status of the PFAS removal rebate program. The state has now put out additional information. Again, this is on our website, it's on our social media, but the highlights are this. The DES will provide the one-time rebate of up to $1,500 per household to assist eligible residential well users in the purchase and installation of a treatment system. Whether it's point of use, point of entry, it will be up to the resident, of course, to decide what's the best case for them. The program is still in development, meaning they have not yet put out the application. They expect to do so, though, in the next couple of months. But the good news is the program is retroactive back to September of 2019, when we first became aware of these sort of PFAS issues. So if you have taken action, you still will be able to apply. If DES sampled your well, and they have sampled many wells in Londonderry, you should receive an email or a letter indicating that the program is live and accepting applications. If you sampled the well yourself or hired someone else, took it to a lab to do so, there's an email address again, on our website, all the information is there. You can email them and request to be added to the list to be notified when the program is live. Okay? And then the last thing is that homeowners, renters, and vendors, meaning, you can have a vendor apply. If you can't afford to front the money yourself to install the system, a vendor could apply on your behalf to get the money to be able to put in the system for you. So again, there's way more information. There's an FAQ. There's information about whether a POE or POU might be better for you. How could you make a decision? What things should you consider? The pluses, the minuses, and we put all of that on our website. It's in Town News on the very front page. Just click the link and you'll find all those documents.
Mr. Chairman, while you were away, we got a very good update from Lisa. And also, we delayed a vote of recommendation for one of the two spots on this PFAS Study Commission. And we wanted to make a motion or get a recommendation for Councilor Dolan to be one of the two that are going to be placed on that commission. So we wanted to wait for you for that recommendation.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I had to step out to speak to a resident, so I appreciate you waiting. So if you would like to make a motion, we'll certainly entertain that.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Councilor Tom Dolan to the PFAS Study Commission.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Mr. Dolan, I don't know what the process is for that commission, but please let us know how that all works out.
I have to be appointed by the Senate President.
Actually, Tom, if I could interject, there's two appointments. This is actually the one that's simpler, meaning it's just a vote of the governing body.
Okay.
The Senate President will be the one, appointment will be the one we go out for, seeking a resident with a tie to an environmental advocacy organization.
On that one, I would recommend that we, when we did the same way we did the PFAS appointments, we look for an engineer or a technical person, maybe even somebody associated with a water system, so that they can enter this process and hit the deck running, as opposed to trying to learn everything about what's going on.
Thank you. We'll solicit interest starting tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. Trolley car eminent domain taking.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject with two small items before addressing that one.
Sure.
There was a resident who had hoped to watch the Conservation Commission meeting recently and noted that it wasn't being recorded. I explained to her, after talking with the director of the Cable Access Center as well as the chairwoman of the Conservation Commission, the reasons why the recording isn't taking place right now. We have school board meetings on the Tuesday nights, which is the same night that the Conservation Commission has been meeting. Before the pandemic, the commission was meeting in the Sunnycrest room, which was set up to record remotely. But obviously, given the concerns about COVID-19, that hasn't been taking place. And so I spoke to her, Drew spoke to her, and Marge Bedoy spoke to her as well, and went over some of those reasons. But she specifically asked that I bring it up tonight and indicated that she couldn't be here, and I just wanted to make sure that I made note of that concern.
So what night of the week are they meeting?
I believe they're meeting on Tuesdays.
So the school board doesn't meet here anymore?
That's right, but my understanding is that the personnel instead goes to the school district and records those meetings, and so there's a lack of current resources to accommodate both. However, as I said, we are looking at whether that can be accommodated going forward.
Okay, thank you.
The other matter, Mr. Chairman, was, this is very minor, the Energy Efficiency Committee that we had solicited interest for. Frankly, we didn't get the level of interest that we had anticipated, and just to make sure that everybody was able to, who might be interested, is able to apply, we did extend that deadline out until February 7th at noon time. So that's the date of the next town council meeting, just to give everybody the full opportunity to put in for that if they are interested. And we've blasted that out on Facebook so that everybody can see it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on the trolley car takings matter, this is a matter that's been before the council where I got a consensus to move forward. As a reminder, the state is trying to take two pieces of property down off of trolley car. to facilitate the Exit 4A project, but more specifically, the installation of the sound barrier. And I had recommended to the council, and the council had agreed by consensus to cooperate with that process in order to expedite it so that that sound wall can get installed just as quickly as possible. And so I've been to the Conservation Commission, I've been to the Planning Board, and neither body has an objection to this proposal. And so I'm here tonight to get the council's formal approval to cooperate with that takings process. The properties are 51 rear trolley car, and that's 0.55 acres plus a 725 square foot drainage easement to be taken. And then 4 trolley car, that's 0.04 acres to be taken. And I will note that per Vice Chairman Green's suggestion, I did send a notification that this was taking place to all the abutters, and did not, just to give them a chance to weigh in, and did not receive any kind of response. And so my recommendation is that the council moves forward as I stated previously. Happy to answer any questions.
So this is not a public hearing. And nobody from Trolley Car Lane had any objections or abutted or contacted us in any way.
That's correct.
Is there anyone from Trolley Car Lane in the council chambers tonight?
There is. I have no objection. It abuts my property. It's what needs to be done. I have no objection.
Just wanted to make sure. So how would the council like to proceed? You have something specific you want the motion to say?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest a motion to authorize the town to move forward with the conveyance of 51 rear trolley car. That's map and lot 13-4-0, as well as 4 trolley car, map and lot 10-34, specifically 0.04 acres on that latter parcel to the state of New Hampshire.
I'll accept the motion based on the solicitor's comments.
I'd like to make a motion based on the solicitor's comments.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes affirmative. Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chairman?
Yes?
May I have a comment? Mr. Malaguti was a little too quick and went into the trolley car business. I want to take a step back to the Pfas discussion.
Please proceed.
I would recommend that the council keep a tally of people who request those rebates and get the rebates, and that perhaps at some level of frequency, maybe once a month or once a quarter, that the town report back to the council to say we've issued, 17 rebates, and and so now total we've got 32 rebates that have come. Just so you can it'll keep it not only publicized, but it'll keep the council in the know as to how that program's being worked. It's my suggestion.
If I could, Mr. Chair, or I'm sorry, Councilor Dolan, we can certainly do that. The information will come from the state, as the state will be administering it, but we'll certainly make the inquiry so we can provide you with an update.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Order 2022-01, an order relative to the expenditure of maintenance trust funds for various projects. Dave? Why don't you do this next one while you're up here too? Do Order 02 as well.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dave Wally. I'm proud to serve as your Director of Public Works and Municipal Facilities.
Is the beard because you ride with the windows down while you're plowing?
Well, Janusz called me and told me it was a prerequisite for the job, so I had to.
Well done.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first order you have before you, if you recall back on December 6th, I had come before the board to request changing the way that we allocate funds for plowing and winter maintenance for all of our town facilities. And what we did was created a $17,000 allocation out of the Expendable Maintenance Trust Fund, which was about 50% of what we typically spend on winter maintenance. And we have now exhausted those funds, and I am looking for a second allocation of $17,000 for the purposes of plowing winter maintenance at the Town Hall, Londonderry Fire Department, Police Department, Library, Senior Center, and Access Center.
Why don't you do O2 at the same time so we can take them all as one motion?
Sure. The second expendable maintenance trust fund request is for the amount of $3,147. And in essence, what that is going to provide a permanent, safe barrier, if you will, at the senior center. As you enter into the senior center, we have a desk set up to greeter and welcoming in people and checking them in. There's been temporary plexiglass put there, as we have in many measures in many different parts of public facilities for the town of Londonderry. I think we've come to a crossroads at the point where understanding that perhaps it's best to move with a permanent structure, and it's twofold in this regard, that the way that the door opens for that facility and whatnot, a good charge of blast of cold air comes in, as well as in the summertime, the heat comes in, and the plexiglass, actually, they like it because it provides somewhat of a barrier, but there's a gap of about 18 inches between the end of the pedestal and the wall, and so what you end up doing is getting kind of a blast around the area, and so that kind of kicked it into looking into doing something more permanent. I found a vendor that I've worked successfully in the past, my previous employment, and they came down and they designed a whole glass partition, if you will, and the people that are working there and the people that utilize the place said it sounds like a great idea.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to approve orders O1 and O2.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. It looks really good, by the way. Appreciate it.
Old business, 2021 Safer Fund. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I come before you tonight to ask if I could seek your permission to amend my request that I gave to you back probably 2 council meetings ago. When I came to you in reference to the Safer 2021 grant, I had requested 4 firefighters. We are currently running 1 shift that is 1 firefighter below the rest of them, and the reason for that is back in 2017, we took one of the operational staffs off the floor to transition into that second command structure position of the battalion chiefs of operations. Since then, we have, thanks to the support of the council and the town manager and everybody, we have now promoted a deputy chief, and this is the first time we've had this position since 2004. So again, this position was taken from an operational position on the floor in the direction of the town. Throughout the last few budget seasons have been no additional bodies. So I thought this was probably the best opportunity to try and refill that position to make all shifts completely equal at 13 per shift if we get this grant. If we don't get this grant, then it goes nowhere. So I would come to you tonight to ask for an amendment on my request from 4 personnel to request 5.
Questions?
I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Everybody okay with it? Yep. Sounds good, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes from January 10th, 2022.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes affirmative. Before I move to appointments, just want to let the council know that we've been discussing, I think the last meeting, the police chief was here talking about security and everything else. Just so that everybody's well aware, the cameras are operational in the police dispatch center, and we can see into all of the schools. So that project's gone forward. We're still working on other provisions around schools' safety and security, but the cameras are visible from dispatch center now.
Good.
I'm sorry if I was remiss, I should have said something about that earlier, I just remembered. Appointments and reappointments. Reappointment of Mike Speltz as an alternate position to the Conservation Commission, and the reappointment of Gene Harrington as a member of the Conservation Commission. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint both Mike Spelt and Gene Harrington to the Conservation Commission.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes in the affirmative. Mr. Speltz and Mr. Harrington, please see the clerk to be sworn in. Liaison reports.
Oh,
Aye.
hi. The planning board is looking at redoing the chicken ordinance to allowing people with an acre or less to have chickens with restrictions. So they're gonna be following that up, and they also made some changes to the, I guess they're boxcars ordinance, those metal containers,
Oh, it's the storage containers.
storage containers.
Right, got it.
So those two ordinances are being worked on and updated, I guess, as we speak.
My understanding is they're also entertaining a dog kennel ordinance. Apparently, we don't have one.
I guess so. But it got a
So-
lot, it was dog kennel, and then how do you define a kennel? Is it a groomer? Is it overnight? Is it outside? Is it inside? You know, right now, we have something that says if you have 4 dogs, you're a kennel. So you could have 4 hunting dogs, and you would be a kennel.
So there needs to be a bunch of clarification.
A lot of it, yeah. But one of the good things about the chickens is that right after that meeting happened, Kit Plummer called me and said, I just wanted you to know that Londonderry, before or while it had all its apples, was one of the largest chicken suppliers. And I think he said it was one of the farms, anyway, used to supply all the chickens to Campbell's Soup.
Well, there are still.
So I thought that was very interesting that, you know,
There's
kind
still
of going
buildings
back.
that had chicken coops in them up
In
at,
in the north end of town,
north end
a
of
lot
town.
of hen houses up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I guess
Merrill's.
thousands of
Merrill's,
chickens.
Yeah. Merrill's Farm.
Yeah, Merrill's Farm, that was the one.
There you go.
Just found that interesting.
Nope.
He was very
Anything-
excited.
Oh, fantastic. Anything else for liaison reports? Seeing none. Town manager report.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything other than just a reminder that the town deliberative session is coming up on February 5th. That'll be at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's a Saturday morning.
And anything from our assistant town manager?
Nothing additional, thank you.
Anything from anyone else? Ladies and gentlemen, our next town council meeting is on February 7th. The deliberative session is on February 5th. So we will be having a session on February 7th, because obviously, we're going to be talking about assessing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. We're adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.